And so it's a little bit like herding cats. And usually when you start a show, if you're the one who's starting, you're in control of all of that, of how the information comes to you, when you get it, how you organize it, so you can maintain your sanity.
Hi, my name is Megan Jensen, and I'm the Director of Programs for the American Theater Wing, and I'd like to welcome you to the Network for Emerging Leaders in the Theater. The network bridges information and access for emerging theater leaders by providing conversations, insight, connections, and networking opportunities for young professionals interning and working in theater administration roles, both artistic and executive. You can support the American Theater Wing and help us continue to provide free resources like this conversation today to the next generation of arts workers. There is no donation too small. We're sending a link right now via the chat, so you can go ahead and give us a donation or make a contribution by visiting us at americantheaterwing.org.
Thank you so much to all of you for joining us for our network panel on building your career as a company manager. We've got an incredible powerhouse group of leaders in our field who are thrilled to share this space with you and delve into their role as company managers, and we're so happy to have them. So it's my ultimate pleasure to introduce our moderator for tonight's panel. Tracy Geltman is the Chief Operating Officer of Stacey Mindich Productions and spent over 15 years as a company manager. She's a superhuman, as are our other panelists. So Tracy, so happy to have you, and I'll kick it over to you.
I'm thrilled and honored to be here tonight to talk about company management, one of my most favorite and passionate topics. So we're going to bring in the panelists tonight. We have Tyler Sims, Kim Shaw, Jesse Freed, and Kendra Moore, who are all joining us. And as soon as we see them, here they come. Tyler Sims is currently in Tempe, Arizona with the Hamilton Angelica tour. Kendra Moore is currently in her first week of rehearsals with the relaunch of The Lion King. Kim Shaw is on her way to relaunching Diana the Musical, which started right before, and I believe shut down right before we started, and bringing that back. And Jesse is really pioneering Broadway back single-handedly, company managing Passover, which is the, I'll call it the first Broadway play, even though Springsteen is running, but the first Broadway play to open its doors since the pandemic. So they have an incredible resumes combined in each individually. And so I'm honored to be here to talk to each of them about company management tonight. So welcome, everybody.
Thank you.
So I talked to Megan before we dive in. We had some incredible questions that came in, but I thought before I would give like a quick 30-second overview of what I believe company management is and what it takes to be a company manager. And then we'll dive into some really great questions that came in. So to me, when I think about company management, I think that the company manager is really the chief operating officer of a Broadway show. They are the liaison between everything that happens in the theater with the cast, the crew, the front of house, the box office, and everything that happens in the office. Management, producers, the advertising agencies, they are really single-handedly with themselves and their associates, the pass-through of all information. Nothing happens on the show, truly nothing. A bill doesn't get paid, a decision really doesn't get made that they're not part of. So they're really the central key in really making sure that that show functions on a day-to-day basis. I say everything up until you hit the edge of the stage or hit the footlights, right? Because that's when we throw our hands up and say, somebody else can be in charge of what happens on stage. It's a job that takes place in the day, all day in the general management office, and it also takes place in the evening at the theater. You're responsible for the care of the human beings backstage and also the care of the human beings in the offices. I often say, and Tyler mentioned something about this earlier, and I'll bring it up later, but it's very rare when you walk into the theater, anybody says to you, hey, how are you? Usually their first thing is, hey, I have a question. And that's who you are in the building. So if this job is for you, if that sounds interesting to you, that's how you find company management. You want to be that person who's really in charge of everything and really part of the operating of a Broadway show. And added to that layer today is COVID and relaunching an entire industry in this unprecedented time. And we're going to get into, not only is the job so busy at the start, but now we have a whole nother layer of that, and we'll get into it. But before we do that, let's talk about how we found our way into company management. So Kim, I'm going to start with you. What was the path that led you to this crazy job that we call company management in the Broadway theater?
Well, I'm lucky in that I had a theater management class when I was in college, and we discussed all of the management kinds of roles. We discussed stage management, theater management, company management was one of the things. And I must say that company management in commercial theater is very different than what we discussed in school. But the idea that there was a position was something that I knew about. And then I'm older. And so it was kind of the beginning of finding job postings online. And there was a job posting for a person to be a company manager intern for The Lion King. And it was during its first year on Broadway. And so I applied and I was the company management intern. And it was like, because I'd been stage managing in school, it was like, oh, this is great. I loved working in the office all day. I loved having a high level vision of the show. And I also loved going to the theater 8 shows a week and having a relationship with the people who actually did the work. And then there was another layer of the fact that that was a Black company and I was a Black company manager, and they didn't really have anybody who looked like them, who represented management at all. And there were several people who were in the cast who were very encouraging to me, who were like, this is important, please, I know it's a hard job, please don't give up. And the fact that I didn't really see anybody left, they all kind of left in the early 80s, who looked like me, who did the job, that was kind of what kept me going over all of the years, because it's not easy to get the jobs and they're hard once you get them. But I thought it was very important, as somebody who's loved Broadway since I was a kid, that I kind of stick with it and do the work.
Wow, that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. It must have been a remarkable way to begin your journey that way, and to have that foundation set you into this career, which we don't often hear that story. So I'm so glad that you shared that. And amazing that you had that it came up in your education, because it's interesting. My next question, which I was gonna to ask you, Tyler, is that management isn't often explored in educational programs. And when you don't know about it, how did you get introduced to it or gain experience? I don't know if it was part of your education, but in that, I asked that to you, Tyler, about your experience and sort of how you began your journey.
Yeah, so I'm lucky that I went to a university, Western Michigan University, State School in Michigan, that did have a program in arts management, but it focused very heavily in nonprofit theater management and really didn't talk about the commercial world at all. So I found getting an internship, coming to the city, and really getting the nuts and bolts on the ground, spending time in the office with managers. Tracy, I worked for Tracy in my very first internship in New York City. And, the education that you get on the ground is often better and more real than what you'll get in the classroom. And I felt that, and I feel that when I knew that this is what I wanted to do, that I had to make inroads doing it instead of learning about it. So I spent a lot of time in college, like taking semesters off and moving to New York to do internships. And I spent the summer at Williamstown and just figuring out what I could do to get hands-on experience, so that when it was time to move to New York with this Bachelor of Arts in Theater Management, which like ultimately doesn't really mean that much, I actually had some real world experience to back up the college degree too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you like put it together yourself, like, because sometimes it's not, everybody has such a different journey, which we're going to learn about, but you have to kind of find your own. And Kendra, I'm going to come to you, because I think your journey into company management is a fascinating one, and specifically very unique one. And so one of the questions that came in was, if you don't start in that path right away, how do you get into this work. And I think you are an incredible example of how this job can come to you. So can you share a little bit about your experience and how your journey began in company management?
Yes, thank you, Tracy. So I like to say that I was in the right place at the right time with the right people. I was with the Lion King for 13 years. I was the dance captain in a swing with the show, obviously a performer. So, and I had come to a point where I was ready to stop touring and get off the road and either do something new or find another show. And I reached out to stage managers and company management to let them know I was interested in learning more about what they do. And just a side note as well, having toured for so long, I actually had been involved in many benefits and productions that we produced while on tour. You know, we various Broadway Cares benefits and other things. And also organizing events and tours and parties, and all of these skills that I was doing already translate into company management. And I also have a side business as well. So all of these things, those two people that were in the company manager and assistant company manager saw that in me and proposed me to the company as, you know, a possibility to take over as associate company manager. So I'm very lucky because like I said, it wasn't something that I anticipated, but I'm so happy because it is something that I really love. And it was a great transition for me from the stage to then being behind the scenes. And as we've all said, being a part of running the company. And the strength that I bring to the show is that I have the institutional knowledge and the history that, you know, some people might not understand. And I already had relationships with so many of the people in the cast and the company that it was easy for me it was difficult in some ways because then I was learning a new job, but at the same time, I already had built those relationships with people, which is so important as being a company manager.
Mm-hmm. It's truly incredible, and incredible too that Disney and Kim and Kendra, that you both started there, that you did get that foundation there, and that they did see in you, and they obviously fostered something in you that you wanted to continue in this. And Kendra, you brought up such a great point, because so much of this job are our relationships with people. We have so much of the management work we have to do, which is the running of the company, but the company relations and knowing that, and that's difficult to teach, right? And so you had that in you, and you knew you were a leader as the dance captain and all of those jobs. It's just fascinating and so incredible and brave of you to step forward and say, I got it, I'm going to try, which is so great. Jessie, I'm curious, in your journey, I'd love to hear how you came to it as well, but also thinking about each, Kim, Tyler, and Kendra had such different journeys in. Obviously want to hear about your path in, and thinking about some of the steps that people can take to get into this field. So if you could share too.
Yeah, I started doing theater when I was a kid, like in high school, like I think most of us probably did, and was performing, but always knew I wasn't very good at it and just did it for fun because I enjoyed it, and always knew that was like not my journey. And then when I got to college, someone asked me to stage manage, and I started doing that. And I liked that because I like details, I like spreadsheets. And then I did an internship in stage management and realized doing the same show 8 times a week really bored me. And I didn't like the fact that this day was the same every single day. And I was in college and got elected to be the treasurer of our student theater group, which honestly is a lot like being a company manager, because I was the CFO of this little nonprofit. And so as I then started looking for internships, I was doing things that were like being a treasurer, looking for jobs that was like that. And that's how I stumbled into company management, which I didn't even know was a thing until I started doing it. So I also got an internship at the producing office, which no longer exists, but and then worked in general management. And I missed being at the theater when I was working in general management, because I felt like I was just in an office all day, and really decided to turn back to company management to feel a connection to the shows that I was working on.
Fantastic. So great. I love all the different journeys into that. And you all touched upon that it kind of came into your life later. I mean, I say later because when we're young and we're discovering our love for theater, if you don't go and see Les Mis like I did and say like, oh, I want to go and be a company manager, but you say, how does it all work? And who is running this? And who are those people that make it happen? And so I said this a little bit in my introduction, but I feel like there is a little bit of a mystery about what the job responsibilities are as a company manager. And so Kendra, working for Disney, I want to start with you. Can you talk a little bit about some of the day-to-day responsibilities that you have? And I'm going to say this as part two, like how do you manage your time in what those responsibilities are? And maybe if you talk about one of the responsibilities, everybody can go around and give a little bit touch upon what some of those are in detail.
Yeah, you kind of touched it in the beginning of all the things like being a CFO and kind of just running everything. And the one thing I want to add is that our job changes all the time. It's like there's constant problem solving of like how to manage something, how to manage people. Every day is different for us, which is actually why I really enjoy it. It's never a dull day, right? I mean, the day-to-day things for me is making sure that we have the payroll done, making sure people get paid, making sure union reports, all those things that are kind of not exciting, but that you have to make sure get done every day. Doing tickets. That's the number one question. When can we order our tickets? Oh gosh, there's so much. Payroll, everything comes through us. All the questions of workers' comp, when people get injured, that's another big one for us, obviously. Scheduling, contracts, making sure everyone's contracts are signed and in. And then just for me on a day-to-day basis, it's just prioritizing my time, what has to be done, what I need to get done today, and then going from there, just basically prioritizing what my day is and going through my emails, making sure that I've gotten through all my emails for the day. And just being organized. I think that's the biggest thing for company manager. You just have to be organized.
Yes. Yes, I absolutely. And it's interesting because you're running an institution, a huge company, but obviously you're restarting it. So to relate to that, Kim, you're about to open a show that kind of was already started. Then it was in Netflix, and I think you're new to it in this time. Can you talk a little bit about what it means to like start day one on a show like that you're coming in on, and like some of the things that you do in the beginning, maybe to start that process?
Yeah, sure. I think this is an interesting one because it's only had 9 previews before the shutdown happened. So we're in that unique like gray area where we're still in production. But so much of the work has already been done. I've taken over several shows before, and I like that actually. And so right now we're kind of in that gray area. And so it's like really, when the shutdown happened, it was very much like put your pencils down and walk away. And there was some work that continued to happen, some bills that have been paid, and there are people who work here who have been trying to keep those things going. But it's really just like, okay, where is this and where is this? And this person said they were going to come back and now they're not going to come back. And now we have to recast this role. And what does that mean? And did you move? And do you have a new agent? And so it's a little bit like herding cats. And usually when you start a show, if you're the one who's starting, you're in control of all of that, of how the information comes to you, when you get it, how you organize it, so you can maintain your sanity. And this is a little bit like, oh, these 50 things are done, but these 47 are not, and 20 of them are already wrong. And so I find that has really been challenging, just knowing where all the balls are in the air, and also the protocols, everything feels like it's changing week by week. So what was very important to you 2 weeks ago is like, doesn't matter anymore. And just keeping, my wits about me as I go through that process it's been a challenge, one that I accept gladly, but it's definitely like, this is not my usual ramp up.
No, you said it exactly. There is so much that is crazy in our world, to open a show in general, but then adding this layer is another layer. And I think you said it best, where you said, oh, these 50 things over here, but then there's still 47 over here. And then there's a new 50 tomorrow. And it's interesting because in commercial theater, and I know we're specifically talking about commercial, for so long, it's been like your general manager and your two company managers, and you lift these multi-million-dollar productions off the ground kind of single-handedly, typing in the bills, and the job keeps growing and it's grown so much, and it's only going to keep growing. And it'll be interesting to see how it develops over time. And we'll get to that question in a little bit about the future, but how you just described that craziness is so real. And so Tyler, you're on tour. You're obviously on Hamilton. We have huge hits in this panel, which is remarkable, but you're on Hamilton and you're out of town. So not only are you running the business entity, but you've taken what I'm going to say 80 people out of the comfort of their home, and you're touring them around the country. Can you talk a little bit about the communication of that and how you in all of that distill information and how that works in your process as a company manager out on the tour?
For sure. Yeah, it's a really interesting time to be on tour. I've mostly done New York shows, and so being on tour right now feels like really, truly wild. The communication, like, it is always the biggest piece of everything. You share it all. Communication is around. It's what we do. But now it's even more important to pass along information, talk to your company members. We circle up at the top of the day and at the end of the day with the entire company in rehearsal, just to share feelings, just to share thoughts about COVID. If there's anything that's happening COVID related, we're talking about it. Our COVID safety managers are sending emails to everybody when they're coming in, sending out protocols. We're updating as the protocols change. And I think I like to circle up, and I like to talk about feelings, and I like to know how people are feeling, because I can communicate as much as I want and send an email as much as I want, but if they don't read the third email that comes in out of 5 that day, and that third email was about COVID, or that third email was about where they should go eat or shouldn't go eat, or a mask mandate on campus or not, like, that is something that that is tough. It's tough to move past, because then the company starts to get upset, or they don't, not upset and like mad, they just fret. And so if it just speaking about it and sharing that time together has been incredibly important here. But also, trying to find the levity, like having dance parties in the rehearsal room or whatever you need to do to kind of shake it out has been incredibly important for us too, I would say.
That's amazing. I'm going to steal the circling up before and after. I feel like we do that a lot in the beginning, but doing that on a day-to-day basis to look at and say, let's take a deep breath. Let's look at each other. Let's have a moment. I think that's fantastic. I think that's the way of the future for us to be connecting with each other and checking in. Sometimes there can be a wall up, right, in management, because that's how, we often have all of the information. Some we're allowed to share and some we're not. But I think that's such a great way to approach the work. Jesse, you're in the building. You're back. I want to ask a little bit about that, but I also want to, in terms of company management and the responsibility, I'm curious, one of the questions that came in, and I think this is an interesting question, so see how it feels when I throw it to you, about a creative expression in the job at all, and if you have found in this time any more or less creative or openness to how you approach the work.
I would say generally, I don't describe myself as a very creative person. Like I said, I love a spreadsheet. I like numbers. I like yes and no. Although in management, that's not always the answer. Sometimes there's maybe, or I don't know. So there, I prefer yes and no, but there's gray areas always. I think the creativity I find in company management is like learning every company as you work on a different show, because in the last 3 years, I've worked on probably 4 shows, I think. And every company feels different. The energy, the character of a company changes. Even on a long running show, like your principles change. The whole vibe of the whole building will change. So that's where I find my creativity, just sort of finding who am I going to be to this group of people. It's different on a big musical than it is on a 3-person play.
I completely agree, especially you hit when people leave and come in and go and out, and you have that whole flow. I call it like the building, like the energy of the building, right? It can change. Sometimes we can make it change, but often, you know, the company really feeds off of each other. And Alan Williams, who's a general manager, actually we're in the office where Kim is, and he talked about that we have people from all different backgrounds and all different skill sets and all different crafts. And we have we have musicians and hair and wardrobe, and we have the crew and we have the cast, and everybody's coming at things from such a different point of view. And often we are the communicators to, we are the communicators to all of that, but you also want the building to flow and to function in a way that's very unique. It's its own, breathing, moving organism. So I'm curious, I know we talked a little bit about the sort of the relationships that we have to have in the theater and our communication, but there is also the back end work in the office. And Kendra, you touched upon it. And Jesse, you did too, spreadsheets and budgeting and contracts and all of that. And Kim, I'm curious, in your experience for so many years, what you would say are sort of the main skills that somebody might need in order to get into company management today?
I really feel like, glad you asked me this question. I feel like it's twofold. There are two sets of skills that you have to either have or develop. And one of them is a set of people skills where you're able to build relationships and talk across different groups and that kind of thing. I think that is very, very important. And some people are fantastic at that. And then the other set of skills you need to have are, like Kendra mentioned, like being highly organized and being able to do spreadsheets, being willing to learn new software, and which is not necessarily a quality that a lot of what you would call bean counters have, but there's a way in which that a good company manager needs to be able to go with the flow, and that you can't be rigid, that, there are things that are going to be more important, that are going to take precedent, and you have to be able to do that while you keep everyone alive and keep everybody paid at the same time. And so to me, more so than anything else, you can learn a spreadsheet, you can learn Excel, you can learn Telecharge and Star and Ticketmaster. You can learn all those little things, like Tyler was mentioning, like the best place to learn that is on the job, because it varies from office to office, but it's that willingness to go with the flow, to be a problem solver. And back to your creativity question, to me, the creativity is really in the problem solving. The union agreement says this thing, my producer says this thing, how can we make the things happen when these are my parameters? And I feel like there's something like that every single day. I can spend this much money, but you need this thing. How do we make this happen for the show? How do we make it happen for you? The creativity on the company management level and the general management level, I feel like is really in that pocket. And so I feel like it's more soft skills that you need, because the nuts and bolts you can pick up along the way.
100%. So well said. I want to keep that idea going. Tyler, I'm going to look at you. So to what Kim's talking about with those skills and all of that, can you talk about some of the people in the theater that you do that problem solving with? Can you talk about the company manager's relationship with, let's say, the head carpenter, the stage manager, the front of house and the box office? So many of those things that come up on a day-to-day basis in those relationships, those are the people that help you solve that. So can you talk a little bit about what that dynamic is like on tour or on Broadway in your experience with those different roles?
Sure, and like you were saying, Tracy, at the beginning, a lot of the time, almost nothing happens on the show without company management knowing about it, approving it, paying for it, whatever. So walking through a building on any given night, you can speak to your head carpenter, who will say to you, I have to have a call on this day, or I need to fix this. And so then you know that the stage managers are planning to have a rehearsal that day, but you also know that the star is having a press event that day. So basically you take all of the information that you pick up around the building and then sit down and figure out how they all work together. Generally with the stage manager is kind of how, like I think the stage manager, company manager relationship in the building is the most important relationship besides the one that you have with your company. And there'll be times when on shows, I've sat with Tracy or I've sat with Susan Semplino on Wicked, and you can have a conversation about one specific item that lasts the entire show. And all of a sudden, 2.5 hours later, you're figuring out how to make that rehearsal happen and how to pay for it and whether or not like it's worth it to bring all these people in and spend all this money to do this thing. And I don't know, that's fun for me. I like listening to those conversations. I like being a part of those conversations, but those individual relationships and being able to retain the information and relay it back in a way that's palatable is something that it's a big skill that you have to learn or have to do. In addition to just to say, like, going in and checking with your company, like you're taking all of this information and going through and solving problems along the way, and then knowing you're going to go sit down and have a conversation, but you're going to walk into a dressing room and you're going to have a 10-minute conversation with the performer about how their day was or how their daughter or son is, and then continue on in your day to solve more problems. It's kind of that flow is really cool, and the conversations that happen out of it are cool too.
Absolutely. And then you take those and then you go back to your producer or your general manager, and it's incumbent upon you to say, this is the temperature of the building. These are the problems that we need to solve. This is the no spin version of how, things that need to go. And that takes a lot of practice over time. I certainly think about some of the conversations I had in the beginning of my career that I wish I could do over, because now I know so much more. And I had a general manager who said to me, you don't ever have to answer a question in the moment. You can always say, I'll get back to you. And that gives you a moment to breathe and to think, and that they know that you're not the final answer. Kendra, I want to take this to one next level, because I think this will relate to the Lion King. So Tyler talked about backstage, but then we also have the whole front of house component. And on a show like the Lion King, that I believe is often still sold out, you have lots of children, you have international audiences. I imagine that the front of house is its own beast, and that's not the right word, but its own living, breathing event that happens every night. And you have to deal with company house management and the box office. And so I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that relationship, which is also so important.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a really close relationship with our fantastic house manager, Sean Coughlin. We are in constant emails about various things, and you're right. We are close with them. I think about the people that work backstage in the front of house. Like I do know all the ushers, and I have built relationships with them, because there are times in the show where things happen in the audience. We have an audience member get sick or ticket situation. There's always something that happens that we need to talk to the house manager about and get fixed or solve. And it's another important relationship within the theater, and a whole nother group of people that are in front of the house, not backstage.
Yes, it's so true. You said that so well, because they're also your representatives there too, and you're trying to make sure that the audience has a good experience, and we want it to be welcome. Jesse, I'm going to kind of go in a similar direction. Like, you're welcoming back an audience. Were there a lot of conversations with front of house and everybody about, for the first time, opening those doors and how that experience was going to go, and how involved were you as the company manager helping create that system in place?
Yeah, we there's actually a lot of changes, because we're doing a show in a New Jansen house. They just added metal detectors for the first time. So like, that's a whole, in addition to checking vaccine cards and all of the normal ticketing things, they added metal detectors and changed ticketing software. So like, people don't know where their tickets are. It's been challenging, but we've been communicating with our house manager super directly, and we also obviously take into account their expertise. So like, I'm not going to tell you how to load in an audience in your house, because that is not what I do, but I want to hear what they think, and then take that back to the producer and be like, Susan, who's our amazing house manager, was thinking this might work better. And as long as our producer's okay with it, I like to let the people who know best what they're doing to help inform those decisions.
Wow, so true. I'm just being mindful of time, and I wanted to make sure we get to some really good questions. And so I have another one that came up, and I'm going to I'll ask it to one of you, but if anybody else wants to answer, because I think this is a really good one for our time. The question is about a healthy work-life balance, which we know is difficult. Kim, you smiled first, so I'm going to come to you. Can you talk about the work-life balance as a company manager? Because we often talk about, people working on Wall Street and they work, 100 hours a week and then they get huge bonuses. We work 90 hours a week and maybe our show's closed. So I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit about what work-life balance in this business is like as a company manager.
Oh, I mean, work-life balance, I don't really want to call it that, right? Because I don't think that it's balance. It is more, particularly in this business, where there's weeks where you're going to work 100 hours a week and 7 days where no days off. There are going to be some weeks that are just, you're going to do the 8 shows, you're going to run the payroll, and it's just going to be it. To me, it's more a question of knowing your personal worth and your boundaries. And so it's different for everyone. It was different for me when I was 24 than when I was 34. And it's going to be different if you have children or if you have a pet. But it's really about you personally deciding how much you're willing to give in any moment to the production. And because they will take as much as they can get, right? If you want to give 120%, there's no such thing. If you want to give 120%, they're going to take it. And I think the kind of person who is drawn to company management is typically not a lazy person, right? You're somebody who typically wants to work hard, wants to see the things through. That you never want to drop a ball. Like that's just kind of the personality of a person who does the job. So I think it's more about you personally deciding how you're going to prioritize your life. And of course, you don't ever want to not do your job because then you won't get another one. And so there's also that, but it's really about you saying, yes, I can work till 3 o'clock in the morning and I will do that 5 days a week, but one day I'm not. Or I'm leaving every single day and I'm taking a half hour before I go and cover the show, and then I'll stay till the end of the show. Or I won't stay to the end of the show. I will just sign the box office statement. Or I'll get an email at 5 o'clock in the morning and I'm going to respond right away. Mm-hmm. Or I don't respond to emails until 10 a.m. Those are just some examples, but it's really on you, the human being, the person, to decide what that is. And you're not going to do it alone. You'll do it with the other person who is in the company management team. You'll do it with your general manager. You'll do it with the PSM. But really, I feel like it is on you to decide how much you can personally do.
Yes, that's brilliant. Yes, I wish I could write that down. I'm going to listen to that later and say and put it all, but you're absolutely right. And I think it comes with age and experience and time, and we might work a little harder when we're younger, but it's also could be different offices that you work in and how that develops. And I'm wondering, Jessie, for you, you said you'd worked on 4 shows in the last 4 years. How that relationship and how your work and relates to the general management office that you're working for.
Yeah, I've worked this is my 4th general management office. I worked at Lincoln Center Theater for a long time, for about 4 years. And working at a nonprofit is also very different than working in commercial theater. Mm-hmm. I would say the most important thing I value in a relationship with a general manager is open communication. I've worked with some general managers who might not share all information with the company manager, and I find it extremely difficult to do my job when that's the case. Mm-hmm. So I'd say that's the thing I value personally. And I also value someone who can listen to me and take my expertise in the same way that I said I like to do for other people. Again, all managers are different. So, but that's who I like to work with, and I find have the best working relationship.
Yeah, that's so true. Kendra, working at an organization like Disney, which is different than some of the general managers' offices, have you found that brings like an interesting layer to it. I mean, I know that there's like such depth of human resources, and there's so many, it seems to me that from an outsider that there's so much opportunity to create a balance in company management at Disney, although I know you guys work crazy hours too. I say that, I know, careful what I say, I've not been there, but I just am curious because we don't have too many institutions like that on Broadway, what that might be like for you.
It is a little different, and Kim can also attest to this. We're working for a corporation, so it is a little bit different, and we do have more resources. You know, I send the payroll out. We have an HR department. We have departments for everything in Disney, so it runs a little bit differently than other management companies do, and that is helpful, but it still doesn't take away what our job is. Right. I mean, especially, you know, I started out on the tour as well, and Kim knows it's like it felt never ending sometimes with the amount of to-dos on the list and constant emails. So yeah, Kim.
Jump in and say that I think the difference is like, yes, there are a lot of people who do little parts of your job, but the company manager job is still the AdPam company manager job, and your responsibilities are still the same. So you're carrying a lot more responsibility than the people who are doing little parts of other parts of the job. Mm-hmm. And since there are that many that many more numbers of people that you do have to work with and build a relationship with, that means that there are that many more people that you have to answer to. So instead of just having your press team and your general manager and your producer, suddenly you have an entire accounting department that is used to doing film and television production that you're answering to. And then you have an entire touring team and engagement team that you're answering to. And so there are a lot of other people who also have responsibility that they have to answer to somebody for the money that's spent, the way things are run, and how people are treated. And so you have to handle them with as much care as you do your general manager and your producer. So that just becomes an additional squeeze between the people that you manage on a day-to-day on the show and then the people you answer to. There's like 50 of them instead of 5.
Right. Oh, totally. And like you said, at the end of the day, it's 8 shows a week, 52 weeks a year, nights, weekends. Like there's no version of the job that one week is everybody's off. And if you're taking off, you know, that responsibility, you know, still falls onto your associate or falls onto your coworker. And I often felt that, okay, I wanted my own time off, but I knew my own time off meant somebody else was working double the amount of time, and that being really mindful of that. I'm mindful of the time, and we have a couple of questions, but before we get to the questions, I think this is a good question to ask of everybody, and then we can jump into a couple of the questions. So, big question, what is the best part of your job?
I would say there are 2 things that are the best part of my job. One is having the opportunity to build a relationship with everyone. Like, you really deal with everyone who touches the show. And that is absolutely my favorite part. And the other part, I enjoy the parties.
What was the second part?
I enjoy the parties.
Oh yeah. Perfect.
Tyler. I would say the same about the first part, the relationships building in the office, at the theater, and everywhere in between. It's really rewarding to watch the show go up every night. I think I learned this from you, Tracy, that we would often stand at the back of the theater before the show went up. I think many people do it, but I learned it from you. And watching the show start and knowing that you did all that work that day to, like, along with everybody else, to get that show to that point. And now, by leading to the second part, that audience is going to get to enjoy that show that you love so much. I think about Fun Home, and I think about how everybody got to see that show, and everybody who did it, like, it felt like a piece of me. So I felt like I was sharing. We get to share that art too. And just to bring it back to being on tour, bringing Hamilton to cities across America, a show that people want to see and a show that people are clamoring to see. It's really fun to know that every night it's somebody's first night in the audience seeing it, and that you were part of that team that made that happen. It's rewarding.
I'd say my favorite part is, like Tyler and Kim said, the relationships with everybody in the building, and like, you're really a part of the show. Like, I've worked in other jobs where you feel a bit removed from it, and I was like, oh, I could be working at a bank. Like, why am I working in the theater? but you like when you're a company manager, you're definitely part of the show family. And also all the problem solving. I like being in there and making decisions. That's cool and fun for me.
Agreed.
I agree with everyone's answer too. And just having been on the stage and now being behind the scenes for myself, one of the greatest joys I get is supporting the company and feeling that I've done my best to help support everyone during the week, the day, so that they can be their best selves on stage. And just being surrounded by so many talented individuals, whether they're the usher or the prop guy, everyone in our building is talented. It brings the show to the stage. So I feel so lucky to be a part of that and to be able to support everyone.
Well, listening to all of you, I think all of the companies that you have ever company managed or will ever company managers are quite lucky, because you are all fantastic. And just the fact that the care that you have for the human beings, to me, is the thing, right? And is all the people that make this fun, crazy business work. There are a couple of questions that came in, and I think I can kind of push them together to answer. It's a lot about gaining experience in this business. And Jesse, you talked a little bit about before being at not-for-profit and coming into commercial, and there's a question about human resources experience and coming into Broadway. I want to believe that Broadway, especially in company management's a little bit more open now to creative backgrounds in terms of where people have come from before just, oh, you have to get an internship and you have to work your way up. I'm hearing people thinking differently about how we bring some people from outside experiences. So I'm curious of all of you, in terms of if somebody has HR experience or if they have some not-for-profit experience, what you might suggest as how to begin the journey into commercial theater. And I'm going to open that up to anybody who has a thought to jump in on that.
I'll jump in. I think that just like everything else that we've talked about, it's really all about relationships. And I feel like the business for a very long time took a shortcut into identifying people that were like the people who are already there. In whatever way that is, you went to the right school, you had the right uncle. And I think in this moment, people are trying to open their minds to other types of people, but it's still business. The way you get your job happens typically very, very quickly. And so if you don't have the ability for financial reasons or time reasons or whatever to do an internship, the best way I find is to like build a relationship with people who work in the business or in the industry that you want to, whether that's a general manager or a company manager or a stage manager. Getting to know them, being able to speak the language, to know what people are speaking about and talking about and how they do it. And then when you go in and someone says, oh, this is an opportunity and I know you'd be a great fit because you've done these 10 things. When you get into the room, you then are able to have an intelligent conversation where people can see, oh, this person speaks the same language I do. And so now I feel comfortable giving them an opportunity. So if you can't do an internship, I would say build the relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry, Tracy, go ahead.
I know, please, Tyler, go ahead.
I was going to piggyback off of that and just say simply that I think most of us are we are empathetic people and we like what we do and we like talking to people about it. And so I think that like, if you're sitting at home, like I want to be a company manager, but I don't know who to talk to. I think anybody on this call, I think a lot of our colleagues, I think we like getting to know people. I think we like having conversations, and it doesn't have to be a big deal. It can just be a chat on Zoom. It can be a chat on the phone. We can text if you want. Like we're all kind of here to tell you about what we do, and we like doing that. So I don't know, I was always a little scared to do it. And I think that it was never, I don't think you have to feel scared. I think people like to tell you about it.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I was going to say, I used to feel scared to like ask for informational interviews and feel like I was taking people's time. But people like to talk about themselves. So I think people will be willing, and like Kim said, especially in this moment, to meet somebody new and help them find a way and get their foot in the door.
And in terms of, I agree, in terms of reaching out, I think we're all through at Pam's I think you can find out contact information. But so I was on a Zoom recently in this time, and somebody called it a warm call or a cold call. I'd never heard of that before. And it was about asking somebody for 20 minutes of time. And I've had a couple of people who've done that to me recently over the pandemic. And I have found such great joy in talking about the work that I do and my career and instilling in somebody else like a desire to do that work. And everybody comes at it, which I think is so remarkable about company management, in such different ways that there's just no one right path. And I think we as managers, I can speak, I think I'm going to speak for the group on this call, of that we'll only learn more when we are working with people who share new ideas and new thoughts and a new way to do something. And from what you've all said, and you said it, Kim, you said, the union contract says this, but this is what the experience is, living in a way that somebody can make us think differently about a situation, I think is what we all want, because our companies are evolving and our shows are evolving, and the time is now, in terms of like, let's bringing new people into this business. Especially because the work is hard, and it's like Kim, you said it, like it's a lot of hours in it. I think that I just wanted to circle back to one other question. Somebody asked about when a show closes, which is inevitable in all of our lives, how we find different work. And Kim, you talked about relationships, and Jesse, you talked about being in different offices. I thought maybe we could just take the last like couple of minutes to talk about just how you find work in this business, because we know there's a limited number of general managers' offices doing that. So if we want to just spend a few minutes about sort of what those offices are like and how you find them.
Take the meeting, always take the meeting. I have taken meetings for shows I wasn't that interested in, but maybe a year from now, they might have a show that I would really love to work on. And we met a year ago, and then they think of me again. There's no reason to not meet with somebody and learn more about the job they might have at that time, even if it's not the job you end up getting.
And I think that it's important to take meetings too. Like, I'm not looking to leave my show, but I would always to welcome a meeting with somebody while I have a job already, or while I'm doing something else that I'm not really interested in leaving, because the last thing any of us want to do, ultimately it is a job, right? Like we're working to pay for our lives, and you want to have the opportunity to get to know as many people as possible. So I always thought it's better to know people and build the relationships as you're going, instead of waiting for that moment when the show's closing and then, oh no, what am I going to do? And then having to scramble. Hopefully, somebody knows something who knows somebody who's hiring for whatever the job is, even if it's not a company management job right away. There are oftentimes to bridge gaps that don't necessarily mean being a company manager too.
It's about networking, really. And Tracy, I've had cold emails or people contact me on LinkedIn that were interested in company management. And I've also had, Zooms with them, or prior to this, gone for coffee. And I think that's a great way. It's scary, but I'm always welcoming to speak with people about what I do and share, and hopefully have more internships and mentorships with people, to get them in the door.
And also, one last thing is to not be afraid to say what it is that you want to do. Yes. Or what you're interested in. Like, don't be shy about it. Don't, like, if you want to be a company manager, or if you want to be a stage manager and you're meeting with a company manager, don't be shy about saying what your aspirations are, because that makes it easier for people to help you get there. And that's all. If we're giving you our time already, that's all we want to do, is to help you get to wherever it is you want to go. So don't be shy. If you get the meeting, tell people what you need.
So true, Kim. I have to echo it, because I think that is the best advice that we could give to anybody who's listening. And somebody once said to me, it was very early on in an internship where I only wanted to be a company manager. And they said, well, if you want to be a company manager, let me know. And I couldn't believe they didn't know that, but I had never said it. I had just thought it. And I just have to echo again that you are so right. Like, sharing with people what you want to do. And even now in our careers, if we want to do something different, when you start talking to people, all of a sudden they're like, oh, they think of you. So I can't echo that enough, and being truthful and being brave to say what you want to do.
Can I throw one more thing in too? Just being nice to everybody. You never know who you're going to meet. It goes with networking, but you'll never know who you're going to meet on the street, at a bar, at a restaurant, who is going to be sitting across the table from you, interviewing you for your next job. I got my job because I smiled at the person who was hiring me once, and I was the only person in the room who did, and introduced myself. And that's why he thought of me to bring me to get my job that I have. So you just never know. It just, if you think that they're peers, if they're not, whatever it is, just, I think being nice to everybody is so important.
I
Well, and you're
echo
nice
that,
to work-
Tyler.
Yes, and you're nice to work with, Tyler. I can speak to that. So, and just in terms of the general manager's offices, I always think, every playbill, Internet Broadway database, playbill vault, you can find, there's I think only like 10 general managers' offices on Broadway. Finding their contact information is pretty easy, and just kind of following along. I still think playbill.com in terms of the job postings is always a great place, but I know that there's still, you can find the list of who's company managing those shows and all of that, and just kind of building the names of the people and becoming fans in a way of like who those offices are. So last minute, I think, before we go, and I mentioned this at the beginning, what do we think this job is going to look like if we all survive in the next 5 years? Do we think there's going to be an evolution of company management? Kim, I'm going to start with you.
Yes, for sure. I don't know what it's going to look like, but when I think about back to when I did my first tour in 2004 and how different the job is in those years, there's no way that in 5 years it's not going to be different. I just hope that the powers that be recognize that there's a lot more responsibility and are willing to compensate us for such.
Well said.
One of the things that strikes me over the time is the way we communicate too, of how we, with emails and Slack, all these different ways of communicating. And I think that's going to change as well, because I know people receive information differently. So that'll be interesting to see how we streamline that.
Interesting.
We've all been talking a lot about COVID during this, and as we've all been working to get back. And I think that a lot of times our job is reflective of what the environment that we're working in looks like, right? So we have our base level things that we're always worried about, but depending on what's going on in the world are things that are important to our job because it's important to our company and it's important to the audience. And I think that as the world evolves, in whatever way the world evolves and things change and more viruses happen and whatever, I think our job will grow and expand and shift with that.
Well, I think we're nearing the end. I just want to wrap up and say that I think you all are remarkable company managers. It is truly the hardest job on Broadway. Maybe there'll be another panel that they'll tell you that job is harder, but I think I say hard with the most joy. I love company managers. I love the job. Although I'm not one at present on the day-to-day, I think that it is a remarkable thing that you're all doing, bringing this industry back. And I hope, as Tyler said in the beginning, that you find grace for yourselves in the day-to-day and that your companies do that for you, because I think you are all going to need it. And so I'll just say, remember to take a deep breath, support each other. That company management network means a lot. So this has been an honor for me to talk to all of you today. And Megan, thank you for having us today to do this.
Truthfully, thank you. A huge thank you to all of you for joining us. Jesse, Tyler, Kim, and Kendra, and Tracy, you were so open and transparent and shared such useful information that we're so blessed and lucky to have you in our industry and leading our field. Thank you to everyone, and have a wonderful evening and all the best, and great to see you all, and we'll see you at the theater.